This is the Ayn Loki Zero. I've had this since December 2023 and will finally give my thoughts on it. There will be two videos of the Ayn Loki Zero. This first one will focus on the Windows side and the second one will focus on JELOS for emulation. A bit of a disclaimer first. I am not a PC master racer. I actually don't like playing games on my PC. I have and will always be a Console Pheasant. Back in 2017, I assembled my first PC without any GPU. I thought that I will add it later in the future. 7 years later, that machine is gathering dust and only used for downloading movies and the occasional Microsoft Office usage. This will not be a good review from a PC user perspective. I will not delve in too deep here and just share my overall experience from a Console Pheasant dipping his toes on the world of Windows gaming. And spoiler alert, the absolute frustration I have with PC gaming in general. So, why did I buy this if I'm not a PC gamer? Simple. I want to play uncensored visual novels. Back in my PS Vita commentary, I mentioned how much I love the Fruit of Grisaia. But the version on the Vita is, as expected, toned down. I want to experience this in full, and the PC is the only way to do it. So yeah, my use case is very pervy and I literally just bought this for visual novels and some torrent downloads here and there. Right off the bat, let's discuss the price. The unit I bought costed me about 14,000 pesos. It is the 4GB 128GB config. I bought a 2TB NVMe to expand the storage for downloading movies. This costed me an additional 8K. Of course, I had to buy an enclosure to be able to clone the OS, so that's another 580. I bought an 8GB RAM stick as well for 1,000 pesos. I also bought a 512 microSD for the card slot, and this is where the JELOS lives. This is another 2,500 pesos. By now, it is at a staggering 26K. I could have bought a Steam Deck at that price, but it would not have a 2TB storage and it was not on Windows. Back then, I did not know how easy it was to dual boot these things. Lesson learned. Another thing I did learn was how much of a hassle upgrading the storage was. I am a complete noob on this one, so upgrading was a first for me, and it was honestly a huge pain. I ended up dinging the case due to my inexperience. I was ultimately able to upgrade SSD and RAM. Did I feel elated and proud? Sure, why not? Will I do this again? Probably not. So, what did that 26K and a whole lot of hassle get me? Well, for the specs, it has a 6-inch screen with a 1080p display, an entry-level processor in Athlon Silver 3050E, an AMD Radeon Vega 3 graphics, Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 4.2, 2TB of storage, 8GB of RAM, USB 3.2 which has a display output, and about 40.5 Wh of battery. Comparing the size to other handhelds, here we are with the Anbernic RG35XXH. Here we are with the PS Vita. Here we are with the Powkiddy RGB30. Here we are with the Nintendo Switch. And here we are with the Powkiddy X55. One of the first things you will notice once you take the Ayn Loki Zero out of the box is the amazing build quality. This device feels very well made, and it is. At the front, you have your taller analog sticks, your D-pad that feels clicky but in a good way. The face buttons feel solid, tactile, and responsive. You also have 4 function buttons here. I don't get unwanted diagonals here, which is a very good thing. At the top, you have your shoulder buttons, the volume, and the power button. The shoulder buttons feel solid and feels good to press. At the back, you have your additional buttons here and your exhaust fan. At the bottom, you have your USB 3.2, headphone jack, and the micro SD card slot. This USB has HDMI out, so you can use a dock if you have one. Overall, the build quality is great and I really feel like that this is built to last. The Loki Zero is a big device, but it was made very ergonomically that it feels great to hold even while playing. The bumps at the back greatly helps with the ergonomics of this device. If you are 30 or older, you will feel the weight after about an hour of playing. This should not be an issue as we'll get into the battery life section later. So, what games have I played on this Ayn Loki Zero? Since this is a Windows device, anything you can do on a bigger PC, you can do here, but of course with limited power. Since I am not a PC fan, let me show you my staggering Steam library. Yes, only Sentimental Deathloop is the game I played and the only one that I paid for in my Steam library. Along with Sentimental Deathloop, we have Dota 2, Master Duel, and for non-Steam, we have the Dolphin and the Eden of Grisaia. I saw on other reviews that this can do GameCube and Wii, and this is where I remembered how much I dislike gaming on PC. The amount of work it requires to configure each emulator is such a hassle. This is especially true on lower power devices such as this one, as you have to tinker more to maximize your device's true potential. I was able to install the Dolphin emulators for the GameCube and Wii, but I haven't played any game yet aside from testing it out. Add in the hassle of turning this on, opening the app and the emulator, choosing the game, and in some instances, some games require more tinkering than others. It is such a hassle. I enabled Big Picture on Steam here to make the experience more console-like and seamless. But it takes too long to boot into Steam. After turning it on, it just takes away from the experience. I am fully aware that there are better front-end for Windows, but this is another level of configurations that I really don't want to be bothered to do all of this. So I just gave up entirely on its Windows side for gaming after a few days. Again, I am from the other side. I am a console pheasant that wants to turn on the device, choose a game, and play. I do not care that I have the best graphics. Hell, if a game is available on Switch and PS4, I pick the Switch 90% of the time. I am not a PC master racer that has the patience to do any of this. So, when I do get around to actually playing, how was the experience? When I did get to play the games I played were The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, Eden of Grisaia, and the Sentimental Deathloop. For Wind Waker, even on native resolution, there are frame drops, especially within the first hour where you go to the jungle where Zelda was dropped by the giant bird. I really did not like the emulation experience on the Windows, so I did not bother anymore. I tried the new Super Mario Bros. On Wii, and it did run better. If you want to use the Ayn Loki for emulation, stay tuned for my next video where I talk about it exclusively using JELOS. For Eden of Grisaia, at first I was frustrated because I can control the screen with the controller. Thankfully, the Ayn Loki Zero has a cool feature where when you press the L1 and R1 buttons simultaneously, it switches into keyboard mode, where the left analog stick is now the mouse and X is for the enter. You can press L1 and R1 to return to the gamepad control mode. After this, it is a relatively okay experience when playing the Eden of Grisaia. For Sentimental Deathloop, this was a good experience as well. Playing with games that have native controller support finally felt like this is what it's made for. I managed to finish this under 4 hours. During this time, I actually started to like playing on the Loki Zero until I had to exit and return to the interface. Then we go to the battery life. This is where I really dislike playing on the Loki Zero, at least on Windows. While it does charge to 100% in about 2 hours, when actually playing with it, the best I could do is 4 hours, and this is with LEDs off and just playing visual novels. I remembered playing Sentimental Deathloop with 70% battery life and got a dying battery warning before I could finish. My total time spent on Sentimental Deathloop is about 3.7 hours. That is horrible battery life. If I push it a little bit with GameCube, it can barely do 3 hours. A big heavy machine with below average battery life? Yeah, no thanks. Could I have gotten a better battery life if I tinkered with the settings? Most definitely. But again, this is another setup I had to do. If I had to praise something more so that I don't sound like a hater, I guess for the non-gaming side of things, it's a Windows device. It does Windows things fine. For my case, that's downloading movies and transferring files. The screen is 1080p as well, and it looks great. So where does that leave us with the Ayn Loki Zero? Let's do a quick pros and cons list. For the pros, this is the cheapest Windows handheld as of April 2024. It is relatively easy to upgrade, especially if you are an expert at this. It has an amazing 1080p screen, and it has a fast charging battery, it has amazing build, and a very good potential. For the cons, Windows is not really a gaming OS. There's too much setup required to make this feel like a gaming machine. This is also not noob-friendly, and it has below average battery life. If you are dipping your toes into handheld gaming that's not just on the retro side, then a Windows handheld may be on your radar. But really ask yourself if you do need the Windows side of things and contemplate if the hassle it comes with configuring is worth it to you. Honestly, even though I do not own a Steam Deck, I would wholeheartedly suggest getting that over this one, especially if you are a newbie and just want to play games. If you are an expert on Windows gaming, I'm pretty sure the specs alone would have turned you off, and for good reason. No matter how many optimizations and tweaks you make, there is a ceiling with the Ayn Loki Zero, and that is its power, or lack thereof. Personally, I chose the Loki Zero because it is the cheapest handheld PC available, and it captures my very unique use case of playing uncensored visual novels. This can barely play Dota 2. Was it worth it for me? If we are in a vacuum and I was only judging this by its Windows performance, I would say that, honestly, not really. In 4 months, I only finished 2 games, Eden of Grisaia and Sentimental Deathloop. That is not worth 26k. Could I have played more? Of course. It's just that the hassle of playing on a Windows handheld is very unintuitive, and just thinking of needing to boot up Windows, enter a password, open the app is enough to make me not bother with it. I would still review this with JELOS, and I may or may not have better things to say about the Ayn Loki Zero. For now, at least on the Windows side, the Ayn Loki Zero feels like a novel piece of handheld and very much not worth it, especially if this will be your first time doing Windows gaming. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Consider sharing, and subscribing if you found this useful. This has been Norman3000. See you soon, and happy gaming!